David is a transformational guide, expertise in facilitating sacred medicine sessions. He blends various healing practices to facilitate deep, long-lasting change in the realms of awakening and sacred healing. He's an awakening coach and author of multiple books, over 500,000 copies. David's really a feng shui master, one of the few Western feng shui masters uh, here, and amazing at that. He is an NLP master practitioner, an awakening mentor. He teaches Kundalini yoga and Qigong, and he practices Buddhism, Taoist, Hindu, Tantric traditions. So a lot of work in the East. So that is really a wonderful combination to bring. I met David many, many, many decades ago at some Santo Daime ayahuasca ceremonies back in Los Angeles, and those were great. Absolutely changed my life. Met David then. Hadn't seen him for a long time, and we were on a meeting of Integral Sedona, and David was making a presentation on Entheogens, sacred medicines. And he goes, Tim, is that you? I go, David, is that you? And we're just going back and forth talking and just forgot about the rest of the group. They were all in boxes. So we reconnected again. And I had the opportunity then to meet David. He would come to Sedona and do some work. I got to do some amazing work with David and his wife, Jackie. They make an incredible pair of spiritual guides using the entheogens. I also took an online course from David, which covers a huge range of topics on the entheogens, including legal things, how it's going on, what's happening here and in Europe. There's a huge thing. David will cover all this. Um, so just in summary, I would consider David truly a top authority in this subject. Why? Because he goes to conferences, he meets with other people, he meets with attorneys, he knows what's going on. So and the other thing, not only is he a top authority on all aspects of this, but he is the highest level, he and Jackie are the highest level spiritual guides who are working for the awakening of people personally and the awakening of our human race, which is sorely needed at this time. So with that, I'll turn it over to David.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much, Tim. And thank you, Tim and Mary Grace, for facilitating my being here and introducing me to wonderful people. This is just mind-blowing. I can feel the field of care and love and just fellowship that you guys share. It's really palpable, it's tangible. And thank you, Tim, for your friendship and connection. And can everyone hear me okay? Sound and light is good? Okay. All right. So let's just get right into it. I'd like to cover a lot of information, give you guys as much as I can today. Actually, I'd like to just start right out, if I could, with something practical. Someone mentioned earlier something about OCD. So I'm just going to put a link into the chat. There's research being done right now with microdosing of certain sacred medicines that has been looking promising and helpful for OCD. So I put a link in the chat for that if anyone's interested in following up on that, because these substances, which today I'm going to be calling sacred medicines, are actually working differently based on the dosage. So a particular medicine at a low dose can have a very different effect and qualitatively and quantitatively than a medium or a high dose. And actually its character and what it does in the body can change tremendously and give different benefits at different levels. So I have a presentation that I'd like to share the screen and so on. So let's make sure the technology is cooperating with that. Get this going here. Okay. All right. So wave if that looks like it's working out. Is that
It looks
can you
good, David.
okay, okay, great. All right. So this is a really vast topic. So what's going to be today? Well, I'd like to talk a bit about what sacred medicines are. Many of you may already be well aware of some of this or even have experience journeying it as well, and we can talk about that. Why I feel and have experienced that they're important and beneficial, some about what they do, and also then focus a bit on one particular medicine and get more into depth on that. And I'm not sure, I think maybe Mary Grace included in one of the emails that I'm going to be back for a part two of this discussion in December. And I'll go ahead and present again. And we can go more into depth on this at this time and also have more time for talking about any of your experiences and discussing them in Q&A. And my plan is to go roughly maybe 40 minutes right now of talking myself, and then have, I don't know, 13 or 15 minutes for open discussion or Q&A or hearing from you as well, because that's a key part of this. So uh, terms. Let's talk about terms. So the original term people were always using historically has been psychedelics. That's still floating around. The newer term now is entheogens. It's roughly the same group of substances. This term means something that actually the brings the God within you or the divine within. Um, but actually, it would be even better if it said it uncovers the divine within. But entheogens is a very good term, and I tend to use sacred medicine. So if I use any of these three today, I'm referring to the same group of medicines of substances. Okay, so these medicines are very historic. It's really one of the first things that humans did. They integrated into the culture of the original cultures before so-called, in ridiculous quotes, civilization or recorded history way before that. So the tribal and shamanic cultures were using them as part of their daily life. They were employed as magical medicines. They were used for all kinds of different things in their religious and ceremonial context, which they just felt was part of daily life. So the shamans, the priest doctors, and so on utilize those for themselves to see into the future, to divinate, and to heal the tribal members and so on. And they were seen themselves as beings, as sacred, conscious teachers and healers that communicated with you. So they weren't just being taken as substances, they were seen as something that you entered into a relationship with as in effect a deity or an entity or a master or a friend. So they were looked upon as beings that you actually were in many ways much bigger than you and were a transducer between you and the greater mysteries of the universe, and deeply worthy of our respect, our honor, our admiration. And so why even talk about this? So this is, my reasons here. I consider it to be, we're not going to get into a metaphysics of whether there's a soul, but we can use the term soul medicine, touching the deepest part of ourselves. And in effect, the actual real old time religion, different religions will get up and say, we're the most ancient. But before there was any writing, before there was any official, this is the sect and religion that we follow, the relationship that people had with plants of all kinds, but also with this category of psychoactive plants, plants that opened us up to the greater parts of ourselves, of the mind, of the universe. These were being used. And so I'm very interested in inquiring into what is leading edge science discovering today about personal transformation through these medicines, about growth, about possibilities for healing, and really transcending our limitations. And so we'll talk a bit about the science today and what can they do that other transformational methods sometimes cannot do as easily. So knowledge equals power, and knowledge applied equals change. So we'll give you hopefully some very helpful knowledge today. So we'll start with a quote from Albert Hoffman, um, an actual master, I believe, and a sage who's really benefited our planet enormously. And in the 1940s, he discovered LSD. He was the one that brought it forth. And he first also isolated in the laboratory both psilocybin and psilocin, the two of the active ingredients. I really hate that term, active ingredient, because it bespeaks this Western idea that we can select one tiny silver bullet out of a whole panoply of offerings that the plant has for us. But anyway, psilocybin and psilocin, isolating those out of those mushrooms was extremely important as well. And he lived to the age of 101, and he was microdosing, as far as I understand, LSD daily throughout those later years. And an important quote from him: "This is the reality." So when he talks about this, he's talking about the experience of being in the influence, under the profound influence of one of these medicines, of being carried away, of being taken beyond oneself and enraptured with this. This is what he means by this. This is the reality which all the great mystics and founders of religions described. It is in truth the kingdom of heaven destined for humankind. There is, however, a fundamental distinction, whether one knows of this reality only from the reports of others, or whether one has experienced it personally in beatific moments, spontaneously, or with the aid of entheogenic drugs. He's saying that experience is what really makes the difference, and just the knowledge of it, the intellectual knowledge of it, is in a way standing outside the gates and knowing about it in the mind, but not having experienced it in the soul, the body, and the heart. A quote here from R. Gordon Wasson: "The mushroom cult may be man's oldest surviving institution." And a little bit more on Mr. Wasson, another groundbreaker. I always like to talk about the masters who brought this forth. Of course, there are numberless masters, but in the Western culture, there are some key figures in the 20th century who actually changed society and changed our relationship between us and the plants. So it's an interesting question to look at whether entheogens are the origin of all religions. And so his quote here, Mr. Watson, is at that point, the point of discovery and use of these substances. He says religion was born, religion pure and simple, free of theology, free of dogmatics, expressing itself in awe and reverence and in lowered voices, mostly at night, where people would gather together to consume the sacred element, with a capital S and a capital E. The first entheogenic experience could have been the first and an authentic, perhaps the only authentic miracle. This was the beginning of the age of entheogens long, long ago. So this was a Wall Street banker who found out about something called psychedelic mushrooms, and he went to Mexico in the 50s, and where at that time the scholars in America and academia thought that the mushroom cult was a myth or was long died out, which it was not the case at all. And he worked with a curandera in Mexico named Maria Sabina, and with her permission, he brought the mushrooms back. He also recorded her with video and audio and so on. He documented and wrote several books about the process, and his Russian wife was actually a master of mushrooms in many other arenas as well. Okay, so what are some of the benefits? Let's get into it. What are they for? Well, they bring about mystical states of awareness. They're also through which you can experience oneness, unity, and divine bliss. You have the opportunity to connect with higher beings and divine wisdom guides. They have the quality of increased wonder and awe, not just during the experience, but then for the rest of your life. Enhanced life purpose and meaning can be brought about. heightened empathy and compassion. So all of these benefits here are brought forth during the experience, but then can also be carried forth into your daily life. And we call this turning states into traits. So you have a powerful state for 20 minutes or an hour or 2 hours or 12 hours or a day or two under the influence of one of these medicines. But then the real question is, does that change your life, or was it just a special vacation inside your body and mind? And so we use something called integration to translate the effects of the potent experience into a new way of living that then continues and even increases its benefits. The benefits keep increasing even if you never take it again. And we'll talk about evidence, scientific evidence that that does happen. Heightened empathy and compassion, improved community and connection with ourselves, with others, and nature. Healing of childhood conditioning, changing our habits, even long held and very difficult to change or impossible to change before this habits, through something called increased neuroplasticity, which is simply a way of saying that the brain is now unlocked. You know, little children before the age of 4 and before the age of 7, the age of 11, 18, and 26, their brains are much more open. They're able to change their mind quickly, bring in new things. But the brain tends to prune itself and get, quote, locked into certain patterns. And we unlock those patterns in these enhanced states. And then we have a period of time which is very easy to change our ways, change our habits, to become new people and have new characteristics that we desire. Improve creativity and thinking outside the box. Silicon Valley is well known for being creative and creating all these amazing products that we use, including Zoom and computers. This was all created in Silicon Valley. And so many of those people have employed psychedelics. And there's actually a whole book written about the influence of psychedelics in Silicon Valley. Overcoming addiction, decreased depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other maladies of the body and the mind and the emotions, and many others. Seems like maybe a long list, but it's actually a very short list of the tremendous benefits that are available if these substances are right for you. They're not for everyone. So we're just here to talk about what the possibilities are. This is not in any way a promotion. This is not proselytization or thinking that you or anyone else should do it, but just an offering and discussion of possibilities. And everyone will have a different relationship with them, whether it's just to say not for me, or to read about it, or to help others, or even to do it yourself. So talking about the ancientness of it, going way, way back, this is some paintings in Algeria of the shaman under the influence. He's possibly hearing the sound, the buzzing of bees, which can be very profound as one reaches what's called the breakthrough state between this and liminal realms. So he's pictured here as having the head of the bee and the body of the human, and then he has mushrooms everywhere, and either lightning is hitting his head, or he has antlers, or something is going on here with the Holy Spirit or whatever. But he's festooned in all areas here with all these different mushrooms very, very clearly. So this is somebody went to a lot of trouble to etch this into a rock. So it was very important, and this is 9,000 years back that humans were doing this. And some additional paintings or carvings in the same area in Algeria, and showing the on the run here, holding the mushrooms. Possibly they're hunting or dancing or celebrating, and they have special masks on, but all of them are holding and carrying the mushrooms. So this is some of the art that is part of our ancient heritage. And all the cultures that we have found have some history, basically, of using entheogens. Now, we're not going to say that all of them used it all the time and in their daily life, but some of them did it a lot, and some of them did it only the shamans. But we haven't really come across an ancient culture that didn't use plants in some form of mystical ways. and including even the Christian culture and biblical, which we won't get into today. So here's some murals in Spain, which are 6,000 years old, showing the cow, and then in the cow manure grows the mushrooms, and it's showing them here growing, and that's the psilocybin mushrooms are growing like that. And it's not just the mushrooms, but also the cactus, whether it be the peyote or even the San Pedro cactus. So this is one of the special jars, which is dates back to 100 BCE from southern Peru, and it's showing the different mystical characters here, and then clearly the San Pedro cactus here growing from the shoulders of the special being here that this jar is portraying. And these are actual trophy heads of humans, shrunken heads that were found in southern Peru, and they were buried with these type of entheogenic substances: harmine, harmaline, San Pedro, and DMT. So these are all highly psychoactive. So what we know, of course, that what was buried with people was very important to the culture. So this is evidence of that. This is from a Newsweek magazine article recently showing that there was a South American pouch that was discovered. It's about 1,000 years old. And they had made this pouch and sewn together three snouts of three Andean foxes. And then also was found with this snuffing tube. And then inside the pouch was multiple ground up psychoactive compounds that someone had carried. This was their stash bag that they had used. And a chart here of the oldest evidence of human use of various psychoactive plants. From the old world, beer goes back to 13,000 years ago. Hemp in Japan, 10,000 years. Psilocybin mushrooms in the Sahara, 8,000 years ago. Opium poppies, 5,600 BC in Italy. And it goes on and on. Jimson weed, 1700 BC in Andorra, and so on. Peyote, 3,200 BC in what is now Texas, and so on and so on. So, this stuff was just used all the time, everywhere. And we look and moving now from the idea of the shamanic use of it to the religious use, talking about the ancientness of that. One of the most ancient spiritual texts, some say the oldest, is the Rig Veda. And many of the verses in the Rig Veda are in honor of what's called the Soma. And the Soma has many terms, but it's very clear that this term is referring to some physical psychoactive substance that was being taken. And the scholars are debating. It may never be actually clear exactly which one it is, whether it be cannabis or ephedra or different kinds of mushrooms and so on. Or maybe it was actually over hundreds and thousands of years of using Soma, it changed its character between one substance and another, but it was actually being used and praised in their ritual work and in their religion. And one of the founding sources, of course, of Western life is the Greek experience and the Greek culture. And so for 2,000 years, there was an initiatory rite. It was unbroken for 2,000 years, where once in someone's life, they would go to this place called Eleusis, and they would go inside into the darkness, and they would have a deep initiatory experience, and they would take a ritual drink called the kykeon. We still don't know exactly what it was, and we may never, but it was considered the supreme peak of their life was to experience this that would take them beyond themselves, the crowning essence of their life. And anyone could go, apparently, slaves and women, even though they were at that time, of course, quote unquote, lesser members of society, we believe, were also included in this substance. You would go one time and everyone was sworn to secrecy, what it was and how it was made. And they kept the secret so well that we don't know what it was, but we think maybe it was it was a type of lysergic acid, which comes from the fungus, which grows, an ergot fungus, which grows on rye and wheat. And that's actually a very similar thing to what we experience with LSD now. Same kind of experience. So there's many, many sacred medicines. There's actually hundreds. I'll just list a few here that are important and ones that I've worked with and helped facilitate with others. Those include LSD, psilocybin mushrooms, mescaline. I don't agree unless you work with the Native Americans that we should use the peyote because it is legally reserved for them, but mescaline can be experienced through legal cactuses such as San Pedro. MDMA, a beautiful, amazing medicine. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Ketamine, which is many people are becoming aware of, is actually quite amazing, whether through microdosing or macrodosing, healing a lot of different things. Ayahuasca, which I think is very important, especially when used in ceremony and a tradition, and also 5-MeO DMT. Now, I've left out many, 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 but this is just a quick sampler list of some of those. And then going a little bit further into the religious aspect, a lot of people are sometimes talk about, well, I would like to do it. I would like to do it naturally. I don't want to do my. I'm just going to ask everybody to mute themselves if they could. Who isn't muted at this time? I talk about this on a religious context and Tibetan Buddhism. This gentleman here, Mike Crowley, Lama Mike Crowley, who I've spoken with and is an amazing person. He's an initiated Lama and is part of the tradition, has students, lives in Northern California, and he's written two books. The first one is Secret Drugs of Buddhism, where he documents how Tantric Buddhism is actually an outgrowth of Indian Buddhism, and the tantric part of Indian Buddhism as it met the shamanic influence of the Bon religion in Tibet, and both sides of this tantric influence used all kinds of esoteric things, whether it be dark retreats or extreme fasting or extreme sexuality, but also many of these substances were used in their deepest forms of initiations. And he also wrote a second book, Psychedelic Buddhism, how to actually do Buddhist practice, and when one is ready to even incorporate some sacred medicines in with the psychedelic Buddhism as an option. So just sharing some of these possibilities with you. So let's talk a little bit about what is the science behind this. And there's so much new things happening now with companies bringing out new forms of psychedelics and research into all kinds of traditional ones and so on. And even companies saying, well, maybe what we could do is we could make a drug that gives you the benefit of what the psychedelics do without that messy trip thing, without altering your senses and you having to go into an altered state. We could just give you the benefit without the journey. Okay, that may or may not be a good idea, but the studies are repeatedly showing that the quality and the depth of the mystical experience is directly correlated to the healing, to the depth of change, to how much your life is affected on a positive basis, whether it be emotional healing, mental healing, physical healing, or spiritual enhancement. So the idea is, I'm saying, is maybe we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe we should look, and I'm all for research into all kinds of different possibilities. And if someone comes up with a great drug that works and someone doesn't want to have a journey, I'm all for that. But they're really showing the title of this article here, this journal article, psilocybin induced mystical type experiences are related to the persisting positive effects. So in other words, the effects of entheogens have been related in study after study to how deep and how powerful the mystical experience is. So the idea is it's the experience itself that is actually part of one of the core movers, the transformational part. You're being transformed by the experience and something that's beyond just, chemicals doing this or that on a kind of a pharmaceutical level. And this is from that same study showing that through these different studies that they have done, many different meta studies on, there's increased spirituality, positive mood, life positivity, self-positivity, positive behavior, and positive social effects are found. And these six aspects here are being correlated to very high levels of correlation here. They show the beta number to the depth and the power of the mystical experience that's had in a properly facilitated type of thing. And so I'm going to show this video here, and maybe Tim, you can wave if the sound is actually being heard.
Here's what we actually know is happening.
Looks good.
Okay.
The ego mechanism, the controlling network in the brain, is called the default mode network. It's a network superimposed on other networks, which basically senses what enters consciousness and what does not. A psychedelic tends to disrupt this controlling system in the brain, reduces the blood supply to it, and...
Sorry, technical difficulty. Let's fix that. Here we go.
It's rather like a government or a conductor in an orchestra. When its repressive control is reduced, all the parts of the brain start to communicate to each other. Instead of being a limited form of communication between permitted networks in the brain, suddenly you have, it's like anarchy. So we have more brain cells functioning simultaneously, and with that comes a lessening of the control of the default mode network, which used to be called the ego, so you have less kind of repressive control.
Okay, so that was one of the pioneers of psychedelics in the UK. She has her own institute, Amanda Fielding. What she's describing there is that some of the ways that these actually create the change is that when we're in daily waking consciousness, we're often under control of something which she termed the default mode network. The new term now is default network, which means it's just what you think is reality, but actually it's certain brain circuits just actually controlling, so to speak, and limiting and gating your experience. And that is broken down powerfully during significant entheogenic experience. And then you're open to all kinds of new possibilities, creativity, and so on. And we'll talk more about that in a second here. And all kinds of things that are down below the surface in the subconscious and in the unconscious are now opened up and able to come forth. And so a lot of the things that are rooted can now come out and start to expand and start to be healed. Deep healing. So we're going to show another short clip on this here.
It opened these doors to all these new interests in science and how the mind works. Mushrooms gave me empathy. They gave me a sense of wonder and appreciation for the beauty of nature. I never cared about nice scenic views and sunsets before mushrooms. After mushrooms, I was like, oh, I get it now. That's why people like trees.
My belief is that these experiences, this psilocybin, it's kind of like a key that opens your mind to allow access to this true nature, this authentic self. And I believe that is love, that connection, and love is connection, and it's what connects us to ourselves, to each other, and to everything.
So we'll go on here to a quote from an individual who needs no introduction. A human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space, seemingly limited. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us. We're talking about the default network, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. The striving for such achievement is in itself a part of the liberation and a foundation for inner security. So to me, that right there talks about what the purpose of all this is. Okay. So you're probably very familiar with the model of the seven chakras. There's ways that these substances that humans use can affect each of the different chakras. And I've mentioned some of the different ones already. Cannabis and medicine are seen by some as connecting with the heart chakra, mescaline with the throat chakra expression, psilocybin, LSD, and ibogaine with the sixth chakra and visionary experiences, and 5-MeO, DMT, and ketamine with the seventh chakra or the more unitary experience. Okay, so after talking about this in general, I'd like to focus for a bit on one particular medicine, which is called 5-MeO DMT, because I thought it would be good to go from the general now to the specific and discuss that for a bit, and then we can have some interactive discussion here. So 5-MeO DMT is a medicine which I think is kind of in a way belongs in a category by itself. It is seen by many as the most potent psychedelic that's out there. It's in the tryptamine family. It's extremely powerful, and it can induce experiences of ego dissolution and feelings of unity with all that is, and even going beyond oneself, and we'll get more into that. It is found in the secretions of a toad and also a few different plant species, including a plant called yopo. And so the crushed yopo seeds are still used in ceremonies in Venezuela and Colombia and Brazil. So this man on the left is blowing these crushed the powder into the nostril of the man on the right here, and he will be having the visionary experience with the DMT in short order. So this experience, this substance, was synthesized by humans first in 1936, but we didn't really know it was psychoactive at the time. And then it was identified in 1959 as an active component in the Amazonian snuffs, which we just looked at. It is created naturally in the human body. You have it in your body right now. It's been detected in the blood, in the urine, and the cerebral spinal fluid. It's not yet been detected in the human brain, which is very difficult to do in a living person. But we have it in our bodies naturally at this moment. And it was extracted, we believe, first. We don't think that there's an ancient tradition of thousands of years of shamanic use of this. To the best of our knowledge, a man in Texas figured out about this particular toad called the Bufo varius, also known by the names Colorado River toad and Sonoran desert toad. This is that guy right here, and you can see his bump right there. He's got a bump behind on his left shoulder and one on his right shoulder, and a couple on the back of his hips there. And these are glands, and when a predator bites into this toad or grabs him in its mouth, the venom or the toxin will squirt into the predator's mouth, and the predator then will have a 5-MeO DMT journey, which will cause him to drop the toad. And pseudonymously written pamphlet by someone named Albert Most was written in 1983, and then people slowly figured out that they could use this, and this is the cover of the pamphlet there. All right, so the Sonoran Desert is here in Arizona and Mexico, and this is the natural habitat of this toad, which is unfortunately now being endangered because many people are going down now to get these toads, and even the narco traffickers are now trying to control the toad area. So that's unfortunate. So when harvested by humans, the actual secretions of the toad dries and becomes these flakes, and then this is vaporized and inhaled and becomes a powerful experience. And this information here is from this gentleman. There's a picture of right here. His name is Dr. Juan Acosta Acurity, and I'd like to just honor him. He was a friend and a researcher. I'm going to show some of his research, and he unfortunately has passed on, but he pioneered some amazing stuff here, which is very important. So we'll skip this one. This is a study here which shows that a single inhalation, which means one experience, of vapor from dried toad secretion containing the 5-MeO DMT in a naturalistic setting, which is fancy name for outside, is related to sustained enhancement of satisfaction with life, mindfulness-related capacities, and the decrement of psychopathological symptoms. So what that actually means is they have found through a study that when people do it once, there's continuing benefits that propagate through their life. And I'm going to show you here on the next slide that the improvement in after one day, their life has improved, but then after 30 days and not doing it again, it has improved even more. So this is a very rare type of medicine where you take it once and then you feel better a day later, but then a month later you feel even better. And then the benefits can keep increasing after that. So this is extremely rare in any type of medicine that this can happen. I'm going to skip a bunch of this and cover it next time, but I want to show you what some of the brain scans look like and a special phenomenon called hypercoherence. But we're going to get right into now, what is it actually like to be in the experience of the 5-MeO DMT? So it's a very rapid onset. If you take mushrooms, it might be 30 to 90 minutes. LSD, it might be an hour or two, and then there's a come on and so on. So this happens within a few seconds. Even as you're inhaling it, you're actually starting on the journey. So it happens basically right now. And I'm talking about not the microdosing of this or the medium dosing, but the full dosing leading to the full experience. That's the one I'm detailing now. And then you can lose awareness then of the room, awareness of the body, and awareness even of that there's someone named Tim or Mary Grace or David. That can be completely gone, and there's only this, meaning unity, divinity, God, or even infinity. And there's no you experiencing infinity. There's just the infinity. And as you start to come back, you can get incredibly profound insights leading to shifts in perspective, long-term personal growth, and improved well-being. And 90 minutes later, you can be just as straight as you can be now and get in your car and drive home from the facilitator's house, for example. And so it's extremely rapid clearing of the brain. And my belief, this is not scientific, is that it's cleared through the brain so rapidly because we already actually have it in our brain and the brain knows how to work with it. So you're not introducing a foreign substance, you're just taking a lot of what you already have in you right now. And so this is a quote here I'll kind of end with. The full experience is called unity and ego dissolution. And in the facilitator circles, we call it the full release. So I'll just finish with this. 5-MeO DMT is unique amongst the numerous naturally occurring psychoactive substances due to its unparalleled ego-dissolving effects. And we're looking on that as a good thing. So it's temporary ego dissolution. which can culminate in a state of non-dual consciousness, similar to transformative peak experiences described in ancient contemplative traditions such as Advaita, Vedanta, and Mahayana Buddhism. 5-MeO-DMT has great potential in this respect due to its incommensurable, in other words, incomparable capacity to completely disintegrate self-referential cognitive neuronal processes for a short period of time, which can literally be as little as 10 minutes. And then there's the come down and where you start coming back. And that turning off of you, that merging with you and the divine is a tremendous change. It's like a psychological, spiritual reboot of the system, under which an enormous amount of change is happening, leading to a tremendous opportunity. And it is an opportunity for then your life to be much different. And if you go through a process we call integration, meaning meditating on it afterwards for the next month, journaling and other practices, then you carry forth the benefits into your life. So this is just one segment of something we could go on and on for days about, but I'll just stop here after this taste and dive into it and open up the floor for any kind of discussion, any kind of sharing that you might want to do at this time. Questions, experiences.
Can I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, David. Thank you for this beautiful overview. And I want to acknowledge that I had this Bufo experience once for Christmas. It was like a Christmas present that I actually gave myself and a few others. And that one experience, as you said, was so amazing in terms of like being shot into the universe and having that sense of unity and mindfulness. And as you said, it's alive. It informs me even now, even though it happened years ago, and puts everything in perspective. So it's, and I like the validity of, how there's a validation of the scientific community, and it's like, it is getting the respect the respect it deserves. Thank you.
I can see you glowing and resonating to feeling the experience even right now as you talk about it, even if it was some time ago, that it is with you. It is helping you at the moment right now.
When it's being mentioned, it gets activated also even more. Yes.
Yes. So many people look at this as really one of their peak experiences of their life, actually. Mm-hmm. And this type of unity, this type of oneness is actually available through many different entheogenic medicines, but it's quite rare for someone to take psychedelic mushrooms, for example, and have this type of experience. It can happen, but it's more difficult. So in this particular medicine that I focused on today, I'm not saying it's better than the other medicines. It isn't, but what's the best medicine, and my favorite one, is the one that the person, whoever they are, can most benefit from and chooses at this time. But I just thought it'd be good to talk about them in general and just to be specific about one and give it some particular life. So I thank you very much, Rena, for sharing that, and open the floor to anyone else. Ruth, I see that you have your hand up, so please go ahead.
This was really a sensational presentation. And in terms of unity experience, I experienced that without any psychedelics a number of times in my life. But most recently, because I've been diagnosed with having labile hypertension, which is when you have sudden surges in blood pressure that can go over 200, and they don't seem to be related to emotional state or anything else that's happening. So I went to a cardiologist at Cedars-Sinai who prescribed that I do psychedelics, actually. And he didn't know where I could go. but I started calling Johns Hopkins, and it turns out they do have programs, but primarily for people who are suffering from addiction. And then I reached someone else who works a 12-step program with people, and they use some of that there. But when he discovered that I have high blood pressure, he said that he was reluctant to do a guided trip with me. And so I just wonder whether you could address about, because I was willing, I mean, it's been a constant problem. I've had to visit the emergency room many times because of this crazy blood pressure issue. And I meditate and I do tapping. I do a lot of things, natural things, but this has persisted. And I would be interested in hearing about how these substances have been used when they know ahead of time that people who have certain, like whether it's high blood pressure or whatever else it is, it's not recommended. So are you familiar with what I'm talking about? And do you have any suggestions? Because I wouldn't be adverse to trying it, but I think that people who are sensitive to their environment also they know when they shouldn't be using something, even if it may appeal to them. And so
sure. Well, I'm amazed and positively influenced by hearing that your cardiologist recommended that. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that further. I do one-to-one guidance with, as Tim indicated, with these medicines with my wife, and I'm putting my contact information into the chat, my email and phone number. So if you'd like to talk about it further, we can do that.
And I appreciate how you broke everything down for us. Really very important to get this information on that level as well.
Yeah, an experience as extreme as the full release of 5-MeO-DMT may not be appropriate the first time, but there's many different medicines that are out there. And so I think a careful discussion of your situation. And to answer your question directly, I don't have experience specifically with labial, okay, you know the word, hypertension. Yeah. But I have some ideas and we can talk about it. I don't want to break it down right now.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We have Nadia and then Bill with questions.
Okay, please go ahead, Nadia. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, thank you.
That was really interesting. I have a dear family member who's been trying to get off antidepressants for quite some time. Do you feel one of these medicines is something that they can go to guide them with that goal?
Very possibly it could happen depending on what type of depression that they have. If they actually have depression, I don't like these labels, but if they've been diagnosed with that, one of the issues is that most of the antidepressant medicines affect the serotonin pathway. And so many of the entheogens are actually also affecting the serotonin pathway as well. So there can be a conflict there. So there would need to be a matter of tapering down of the antidepressant with supervision before starting. So the answer is yes, but it would be carefully. And there's possibilities with microdosing, and there's possibilities with powerful journey experiences as well. But everyone is different, so there is an opportunity there for that, and people have quote unquote healed their depression with these types of substances. But you have to look at your whole life as well. What are the causes of the depression, whether they're genetic or environmental or lifestyle and so on. So it's typically not just one thing. It's not just like, okay, take the medicine. It's like, okay, it's medicine, but plus other things, and a supervised type of program. So yeah, feel free to contact me if you want to talk about it more.
Thank you.
Just as a time check, we're got about 5 minutes ago, and we have Bill and Carolyn who have questions.
Great. Let's go to Bill.
All right, I'll be very quick here in recognition of the time shortage. Yes, I just wanted to acknowledge that Tim introduced me. Yes, it was an ayahuasca ceremony, and the what remains with me is the vision that I had. I had a vision that took form and provided insight of a spiritual nature. So I want to acknowledge that, and it can heal, but it can also just provide that sort of insight. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Thank you, sir. This was really helpful. I have a question about LSD, a couple questions. One is, we were told, you said that one does not get addicted or it stops addiction, but some people, I think, I'm totally ignorant about this mostly. So if they're on LSD and they keep taking it, if they already had a fabulous sense of unity and glory of experience, do they keep doing it because they want that, because it didn't keep going in their lives? And what about people that had bad trips? Is LSD different from the rest of these items you're talking about?
So the first question is, why does someone just keep going on and on taking it? How often, or do you mean?
I don't know. I have no idea, but I'm not thinking like once a year or something. I'm thinking about almost daily. What about Timothy Leary? How often did he take it?
Well, at least I mean, I have no idea how often Timothy Leary did it, but the actual addiction to most of the entheogens doesn't really exist, because there's always exceptions in the rare cases, but they're not, generally speaking, addictive. There's a few exceptions, but there's not these people, running around out there being addicted to LSD. That's not. I mean, if you might find one rare case, but it's not like a prevalent thing that happens. It's extremely rare if it happens at all, because
Okay.
because people, I mean, it's 12 hours long, and it upends your entire life, and most people just don't want to do that again and again. I mean, how many life revolutions do you need, and how many can you handle? I mean, there are people that just keep taking it, but they're extremely rare. So that part is not really a worry. We can talk about exceptions later, but in general, entheogens are so powerful that right there limits the addiction, because it's not about how high you get. It's about the fact that it's so profound that you need some time to deal with it, and most of us need some time to integrate it. I mean, some people might have a psychedelic journey once a month, but they're working with it, so to speak. So it's not about the frequency, but we can kind of set the addiction thing aside in general. And then the second question was
Bad trips.
Okay. So right now, we are here in whatever state of consciousness we're in, and we're dealing with reality, and we're dealing with life, and we're looking at the computer and the wall and our relatives, and I have to wash the dishes, and I got to go to the store, and I'm dealing with all this, whatever I'm going on today. But then below the surface, my stuff is there. But I'm not looking at all that stuff right now. In fact, there's a whole bunch of stuff from childhood I haven't dealt with yet, and maybe from past lives, if those exist. And but I manage that while I'm awake, and in my dreams it comes out. And then sometimes I have good dreams or bad dreams, and then sometimes under deep therapy it comes out. But then when you take a powerful psychedelic, you can't manage it anymore. You can't, because that repression mechanism, the Pandora's box, is open.
Oh.
Okay. All right. And so the so-called bad trip mainly comes because the material that's coming up is not desirable for one to look at, because it needs to be healed. It's nasty stuff often. Okay. This isn't all just fun and games. So
Good.
here
Thank you.
comes the unresolved garbage. So if your facilitator can help you with that, it's coming up to be healed. But as it comes up, if you decide to resist it and clamp down and not want to look at it and freak the fuck out, then you can make yourself have a really bad trip. For sure. So bad trips are, the material is not what I want to look at, and I'm just choosing to try to not look at it. I'm going to try to just resist this. So because if the medicine is strong enough, your normal coping skills are not good enough. You have to surrender right now, everything. You're at your wit's end, and it's time to fully surrender. And the majority of people actually, if they're with a facilitator and they had a so-called difficult journey, there's many different levels of what you call a bad trip. But those are, when it's properly facilitated and the person is prepared properly, those, they hardly ever happen. Okay. But even if they do, then they usually look back on it a few months later and say, that was very important for me. I'm so glad I went through that difficult material because I got new perspective. I healed so much of, the people talk about years of therapy in 6 hours. That's what they're talking about is, so much came up. It was really intense at the time, but the healing was absolutely massive.
David, we've got to start winding down here because we're past that was great, fantastic. Thank you so much. We've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to do. We're going to meet again in December. We'll let you know when that is, and we can continue with part 2. When I talked to Mary Grace about this, I said, we're going to have to do this in 2 parts because it's so deep. There's so many things going on. So right now, let me stop recording. Stop recording.
Let me